This is Aberration Earth. Our adventure continues. After pulling himself free from the wreckage of their pod, what remained of his armor was less than half a suit, while many of the critical supplies he needed were scattered and lost. He had spent 2 days scavenging the area to retrieve whatever was salvageable, which hadn't been a whole lot. He found enough freeze-dried food to last him a few months with extreme rationing. But as he had discovered soon after, there were plenty of other avenues to secure sustenance from the local environment, and his requirements were minimal, meaning he had no fear of suffering starvation. Numerous surgeries had changed his insides profoundly. The biology of the Zaxvoyan Voyagers could hardly be considered human at this point. The alterations had been a requirement of the mission, and he had subjected himself willingly. Ventrulis had been second aboard the Cazoose. Among his many duties, he was also responsible for maintaining discipline among the crew. As such, and for other reasons, he, more than any of the others, received the most enhancements. The results of the program spoke for itself. They were the most adapted humans ever engineered for deep space travel and otherworldly exploration, bordering on the superhuman. Their bodies functioned optimally when just their minimal needs were met, be that oxygen, food, or water. Their endurance allowed them to even survive in the vacuum of space unprotected for a limited amount of time. Leopold 7 had a gravity 50% greater than that of the Earth, so by natural processes the colonists were stronger. But for the expedition members, their training was primarily located on Leopold 3, a planet with an even higher gravity that was 5-fold greater than 7's. For all the enhancements, however, he found Earth offered him one major obstacle: the predominant ocean water that separated the numerous islands. He had learned quickly that this proved anathema to his surgically altered biology. For all the enhancements, however, he found Earth offered him one major obstacle: the predominant ocean water that separated the numerous islands. He had learned quickly that the mass of his body made it a great challenge to stay afloat without aid of some kind. He could hold his breath for hours, and even if he sank to the bottom, he could technically walk. But some crossings were much too far for him to take the risk. Drowning was not a fate he relished. None of the inflatable flotation kits had survived the crash, and so he had to improvise and use whatever materials he could find to fashion a usable raft. This he found in the abundance of forests growing here, and fortunately for him, every island he had visited so far was much the same, providing him with a variety of trees. There was enough raw material where he was now to make himself another one. He walked over to the first tree while the girl followed along behind him, skipping across a line of large rocks as they went. Fae, as in fairies from fairy tale? I suppose anything's possible now, he said to her as he looked around, assessing which among the tall growths would suit his needs the best. It was hard to believe, but what choice did he have? The cold hard facts of present experiences were screaming at him that it was all real. Tell me, Grace, what was that about? Why was that machine helping that dragon? And how did you come upon us? Merrick asked, his face becoming pensive. They are the guardians of scale and steel, she said to him, as he cracked a tree trunk using a quick open strike with his right hand, causing her a start. Catching the falling mass and steering it aside, where it landed with a loud thump, she watched him with some amazement. He listened intently as she continued her explanation. Sentinels of the stone. They are the protectors of this world, some say. I've heard others claim they are more like demons who deliver only terror wherever their shadow falls. I'm not sure what they would want with you. The red brute doesn't like our kind, and the feeling's mutual, so we do our best to stay out of his way. The other one pays us no mind, which we are grateful for. Nodding in acknowledgement, he selected several other trees and repeated the process of felling them, after which he stripped the lengths, so they were relatively smooth and bare. Then, when he had enough, he began moving them down towards the shore, where he would bind them with a spool of utility cord that he kept in his supply pack. As he dropped the wood and aligned them side by side, Grace continued, answering the latter half of his question. I spotted you from the other side when you came to shore earlier. I decided to keep an eye on you since I've never seen a person quite like you before, Merrick." His curiosity was piqued. She was the first person he had met since making landfall, so he asked her, probing for more insight. "What makes me so unusual?" "Your clothes are all funny. They're torn up and still shiny. Not even the Blanche Knights have anything like that," she explained, pointing to an intact piece of his evac suit. "And you must be 4 or 5 times taller than I am." "Right. I am tall," he replied, half paying attention as he pushed in the last log and secured it to the others. "Yes, you're like a baby giant. Most people are 2, even 3 times bigger than me. Women and men makes no difference. But you're nearly twice any man I've ever laid eyes on," Grace exclaimed, her voice rising, eyes widening as she emphasized her amazement. "And you're stronger than any of them, too. No man can survive a dragon like you did, especially that one." The man from another world paused, looking over at her while cinching tight his bindings. "You're saying I'm a giant?" "I said nearly. For a man, you are very large. No offense meant, but I thought you might be a sea Goliath at first, seeing your size and how you came out of the water," she replied, nodding knowingly as she spoke. I don't know what a sea Goliath is, but I guess that makes sense in a way. So that's why you were keeping an eye on me. You weren't sure what I was." "That was smart," he said approvingly as he went back to tightening the logs of his makeshift raft. Grace blushed slightly at the compliment before moving around, practically twirling in dance as she went, her eyes keeping a close watch inland for any dangers that may appear. With a grunt, he pulled tight the final tie and stood to survey his handiwork. Satisfied with what he'd put together, he turned to the creature who had saved him, saying, "What are Blanche Knights? Should I be worried about them?" For the first time, her expression darkened. Her voice dropped in tenor as she became quite serious. "Worshippers of the weeping worm. It is said they were men who bathed in its sorrows and were changed forever. Bled of color, their souls have been stripped bare. If you see their banner flying in all white with nothing but a single bloody tear falling from the corner, you'd best be going in the other direction." It sounded ridiculous to him. Knights and monsters and fairy tale creatures. If this was the world of their ancestors, what could have happened here to make it like this? Merrick made a mental note of Grace's warning and double-checked the fastenings on his raft. Content with them, he dragged the rudimentary platform to the water's edge, pulling it with little effort using only one hand. His tall frame cast a long shadow across the mixed sand and rocks at the shoreline. His new friend had not been wrong in saying he was large for a man. He stood almost 3 meters high, a good meter taller than the average person. Placing his raft halfway in, he stopped and turned to her once more. Removing his helm, he tucked it under an arm. It was a show of trust on his part to expose himself this way, and a gesture of respect to the pretty little creature that had offered him help and kindness when it was most needed. "Those Blanche Knights sound like trouble. Thank you, Grace. I'll watch out for them. Do you want to come with me? I could use your help." She concealed a momentary blush with a dipping curtsy, smiling at him as she got up and replied with a wink. "I'm sure you could, but you won't get far unless someone distracts those two for you, am I right?" Surprised by her refusal, it took him a moment to respond. "Are you offering to lure that dragon and machine away from me?" "It will be easy. They are not half as clever as they think they are. Besides, I'm not so good with water. You'll be better off on your own," she answered dismissively. "I'm not sure I can ever pay you back for all your help, Grace. I'm heading north. There should be another large island not far from here. Will you be all right? I don't want you getting hurt," he remarked, looking at her intensely for a second before turning to gaze across the ocean waves undulating under the late afternoon sun. Grace skipped towards him and hugged his leg. Then, releasing her hold, she began to dance away, long reddish hair bouncing behind her as she called back to him over her shoulder. "I'll be fine. There are 200 years under these feet. Take care of yourself, Merrick. It would be nice to meet again one day." Watching his most unusual rescuer disappear back into the trees, he was trying to digest what he had just heard. Was it a joke, or was she serious? If it was true, he would have to stop thinking of her as a girl. She would be ancient despite her appearance, and it was he who would be the child between the two of them. With a pressing need to continue moving onward, he walked his raft into the waves as far as he could. Then, jumping atop it face down, he paddled out using both arms. He was strong enough to make his way across the incoming waves into the open ocean. Internal guidance kept him steered on the correct heading, north, towards that formation of lakes he had spotted. Having a moment to ponder events, he thought about what had just happened, when suddenly he recalled the blinking lights on that giant machine that had joined the dragon in pursuing him. There was a recognizable coded message there, and now that he had the time, he replayed the sequence in his mind. The pulses were clear and easy to put together, as he confirmed each letter twice over. His alarm rose simultaneously as he deciphered the hidden missive, which when translated spelled out the words, "If the prophecy is true, that is the one." And there ends this episode. Until next time, thanks for listening. Please engage the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content.